Hello and welcome to today's broadcast. Hang on, I can do something musical about that. It's a xylophone. I'm trying to introduce some kind of familiar element. Welcome. I've posted for today's topics Liz Cheney's denunciations and also Justice Samuel Alito and his quiet bigotry that's a little noisy today. So to start off with, let's go to Justice Alito. And I'll make this bigger for a moment so that you can see what we're looking at. We're looking at a clip of Justice Alito providing a hypothetical today in a case. He's hearing arguments, or he's about to hear arguments concerning the rights of people to refuse service. And so he's putting forward a hypothetical to say, well, what about a black Santa at the mall getting to decline a child being dressed in a KKK outfit? Now, a KKK outfit doesn't have First Amendment protections or right of service protections because it's hate speech, I would imagine. But in any case, it's really offensive to joke about black children wearing Ku Klux Klan outfits because he's sarcastically saying that happens. And I'll let you hear the sound of Justice Alito's voice saying exactly that. It's a 45-second clip. Have a listen and think for yourself. Is there a bigot? Is there a naked bigot on the bench of the Supreme Court in the United States, which is a branch, a co-equal one-third branch of the United States government?
If there's a black Santa at the other end of the mall and he doesn't want to have his picture taken with a child who's dressed up in a Ku Klux Klan outfit, that black Santa has to do that?
No, because Ku Klux Klan outfits are not protected characteristics under public accommodation laws.
And presumably that would be the same Ku Klux Klan outfit, regardless whether the child was black or white or any other characteristic.
Yeah, you do see a lot of black children in Ku Klux Klan outfits, right? All the time. Suppose that
Can I?
Yeah.
Yeah, is that all right?
Sure.
So this is a case about free speech and LGBTQ rights. He laughed at his own joke there, and you could hear titters in the courtroom as well. Joking about the murderous, violent history of the KKK that's responsible for terrorizing and outright taking the lives and happiness and family cohesion away from black families in the United States. Some people wouldn't want to make jokes about that, but Justice Alito does. You can draw your own conclusions, but mine is that the man is a bigot who thinks who wants to make light of the suffering of people who belong to the demographic targeted for violence and murder and emotional terrorism, theft of feelings of security and safety purely for existing in the United States and for succeeding, in contrast to what the KKK wants, which was and is a preservation of hierarchical ordering of society according to race. So some entrenched privileges that are incurred on the basis of white race and affiliation with certain Christian religions. Yeah. Oh, Craig is here and Christopher are both here. That's so exciting to see you both. I'm glad I got to broadcast at a time when you were free. That's so cheerful and nice. I'm just trying to have a look at what the internet's reporting about Justice Alito's remarks today. So I'm seeing a piece posted an hour ago. It also says Justice Alito teased Eleanor Kagan, a fellow Supreme Court justice, claiming that she might know the Ashley Madison dating website. So that's his stand-up material, but it's sexual harassment in the workplace. according to one Twitter poster I noted, and I think other people might not appreciate his use of the Supreme Court bench as a open mic night for his stand-up comedy efforts. So the case is a case of a Christian graphic artist in Colorado who says designing wedding websites for gay couples is against her faith. So these are people who provide services, online services, website design, people more broadly, the right of people to say, your existence is offensive to my religious faith, therefore I should not be compelled to treat you as I would any other paying customer. I should be afforded the legal right to express my disgust through my acceptance of certain clients. Now, they held that argument in favor of a Christian baker to say that whilst you might have to sell a loaf of bread to anybody who comes into your shop, if you're a baker of bread, if you're a baker of cakes, then you're an artist who decorates cakes, and an artist cannot be compelled to accept a commission from just anyone. And so I presume that argument will be found by the 6-3 stacked conservative stacked Supreme Court as saying, yes, artistry allows you the prerogative to legally discriminate against people whose existence disgusts you because of your religious beliefs. Now, America had prided itself in moving on from legal protections given to people wanting to express their religious-based disgust of other groups, be they other religious groups or groups expressing a sexuality that is against the tenets of some people's religious faith. You weren't allowed to express your disgust with Black people or Jewish people or Irish people by making revulsion-based choices of who you would serve and who you would extend service to. But that's all being overturned by the conservative nature of this particular Christian theocrat, Christian dominionist-based Supreme Court. And some of that is due to the Federalist Society, Leonard Leo, very powerful Catholic gentleman, and other people who have worked very hard. They've really played the long game to attract wealthy donors, to promote activism amongst wealthy, influential people, to get donations, to grow influence and power, and have Supreme Court justices appointed by Republican presidents to the Supreme Court, and to encourage Mitch McConnell in his effort to steal Supreme Court seats away from Democratic presidents such as Barack Obama by blocking them when it was their turn to make an appointment, because appointments only come up when somebody dies or retires, and such an occasion did come up during Barack Obama's second term, and Mitch McConnell fabricated an excuse to unjustly block Barack Obama's ability to make an appointment, using that filibuster to avoid holding even a hearing for Barack Obama's selected appointee, Merrick Garland. So that enabled Trump to then make an appointment at the beginning of his tenure in office. And Trump, as many of us know, is stained with illegitimacy because of the help he received from the Russian government. The Russian government is led by Vladimir Putin, is far more exposed now as an international terrorist organization that has rained death, horror, and tyranny over the neighboring country, the people of the neighboring country of Ukraine, as part of their terrorist expansionist proclivities, or to be less fancy about it, their interest in hurting other people to puff up their own ego and sense of importance, as well as make territorial gains. I'm not going to say to benefit the people of Russia, because Putin does not do things to benefit the people of Russia. He steals from the people of Russia. There's a lot of misdirected taxes and misdirected funds that line the pockets of himself and his allies, rather than being invested in Russian roads, Russian infrastructure, Russian hospitals or schools. So the Russian people experience significant poverty without realizing it, and are misdirected by Putin and Kremlin control of media into blaming people like the West or Western allies such as Ukraine for the hardships they themselves suffer. They are fed a diet of false grievance. False grievance is important because Fox News audience members in the United States are fed a diet of false grievance as well, and it's very potent. I might put it into a poem. I'm not very good at writing essays. I'd love to just be able to sit down and toss off a column or an essay, and I've tried to talk myself up into doing it so many times, but it hasn't worked out yet for me. So fed a diet of false grievance. I can write poetry, and maybe if I try and build on what I can do, that will work. All right, so we've listened to Justice Alito. Who else are we going to listen to today? Liz Cheney has at least issued a denunciation of Donald Trump's call to terminate the Constitution. He was working with a prompt of new Twitter owner, new corrupt, right-allied, very corrupt person, actually. I will say that Elon Musk is now famous for some of his malfeasance. It's becoming more broadly known that he has a tendency to lie on loan applications and play government and lending organizations off against each other by pretending to already have a loan locked in from one party to the other. And he may have committed other crimes as well, which gives him a motivation to try and undermine the current Biden administration and disrupt government in favor of Republicans achieving power in office and then being indebted to Elon Musk for his assistance. So presumably that's a strategy. I will speculate that this is a strategy to help Elon Musk cover up criminal activity on his own part, more than what's already known in terms of just misconduct with regards to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, because he's been told off multiple times for pumping up certain stock market ventures, such as the cryptocurrency Dogecoin, by posting about how exciting that's going to be, or he's going to buy that or sell that, and in doing so, inflating the price of Dogecoin or inflating the price of Tesla shares by making unsubstantiated commentary on Twitter, knowing that he's got a large internet following of people that will help push along a pump and dump enterprise. And if you know what that means, it means you tell everybody to buy certain stock because you've got some, and when they will buy it, it inflates the price. You sell it, that's the peak. The price goes down, everybody realizes, oh, he sold it, it's not going to continue to go up. And he's dumped it, and the price falls, and everybody that bought as it was going up on your recommendation are the losers and contribute to the windfall that you gain from an illegal pump and dump strategy. So let's have a look at this quote from Liz Cheney. I'll make it bigger. Always happy to see people join in for the broadcast, because the more effort we put into educating ourselves and each other, the more confident we become in our own pro-democracy voice, the more we stand up for governance by the people, for the people. The more we vote in a way that will minimize the ability of malicious actors to exploit human tendencies to bunker down in tribalistic groups that don't provide real protection, but do provide unearned privilege or the appearance of unearned privilege. So there is definitely a lot of privilege associated with whiteness in the United States because there's a lot of under-acknowledged government subsidizing of certain good-paying jobs, that there's typically been a lot of gatekeeping around keeping those jobs in the hands of white people, or disproportionately keeping them in the hands of white people. Jobs that have corporate paid healthcare benefits, but really those corporate paid healthcare benefits are government funded because those corporations can write off those expenses as tax relief. So the corporations are essentially able to keep more of their profits for themselves because the government is indirectly providing healthcare to the people who have those types of good jobs that are associated with good benefits and thorough healthcare coverage. So yes, a lot of white people, whether consciously or unconsciously, sense that they must protect these privileges and oppose efforts to increase diversity or force corporations to put aside their standard practices of predominantly disproportionately employing white people and throwing the CVs of Black Americans in the bin, because whether consciously or unconsciously, they subscribe to false ideas about the worthiness of people depending on their skin color. So they have a tendency to disregard the qualifications, the experience, the merit of Black Americans, a very entrenched practice in modern America that's beginning to be challenged, but by no means has been overcome. But diversity efforts alarm white people who sense, are things changing too much? Will this overturn my comfortable boat? A sense of panic that's introduced because of the status quo preservation instinct that a lot of people have. And people who want to be affiliated or adjacent to those kind of privileges, those kind of systems of access to comfort and ease that you get when you can be confident that your job is backed up by great benefits that are covertly subsidized by the government. So you're getting the lion's share of government funding. People who want in with that, which is a proportion of minority people who people from minority groups who think that affiliating themselves with Republicans, looking at you, Tim Scott, Herschel Walker, Candace Owens, Kanye West, if they affiliate themselves with the white protection racket, that they too will attract those benefits to them. And they certainly are right in that there is an infallible stream of income to any Black person or minority person who helps the Republican Party launder their reputation, whitewash their actual bigotry, their actual determination to exclude Black Americans from privilege, to enhance their own feeling of well-being, to enhance their own feeling of comfort and confidence about the future by continuing the inertia of excluding other people unfairly, and by perpetuating negative stereotypes of the merit of people, of white people versus Black people, perpetuating the idea that you shouldn't rock the boat of white privilege. You might fall in. You won't be welcomed into the boat if you challenge it. So there's lots of ways they've derived and devised to whitewash that system of preserving and gatekeeping certain benefits and privileges and coziness. Now, privilege doesn't have to be a dirty word. Everybody, many people at least, can find some ways in which they're privileged. Oh, look, living in America has privileges for a lot of people. even if you're relatively worse off than others, perhaps there's still some advantages that make your existence more pleasant than if you lived in a more developing country without access to the level of schools you have. Even if it's still relatively unfair, there's often still some privileges associated with residents in the United States. And I will speak to just exclude those people whose water is polluted, whose lead piping hasn't been changed yet, who live near under-regulated factories where corporations are taking advantage of loopholes or under enforcement of regulations to just pump out toxic chemicals that shorten the lives of the people with the misfortune to live within a certain geographic distance of their vulture capitalistic exploits. And I say vulture capitalism because I like capitalism. I like regulated capitalism. Communism is not a tenable system of governance. It leads to often authoritarian consolidation of power in a centralized bureaucracy that pretends to be for the people, but actually over-concentrates power and tends to lead to mass murder of millions upon millions of people. So we dismiss communism as untenable. We say what actually works across human history has been regulated capitalism that has the benefits of some free market machinations, but also responsible governance, helping provide a cushion and helping invest in a nation. So investment is key to a nation that can flourish. And under-regulated capitalism that says corporations should pay no tax, rich people should pay no tax. Maybe middle class and poor people can pay some tax to get some collective funds to support the military so we can shoot anybody who wants to come try and take our wealth. That's allowable, but mostly taxation is theft, and we should have tax cuts for the wealthy. That's under-regulated capitalism. Some call it vulture capitalism. Some call it spoiled child capitalism. Actually, nobody calls it that, but I just did it. Spoiled child capitalism. It's not going to take off, but I'm just thinking about it. Corporate socialism. Corporate socialism, where you go, only the wealthy should have a safety net. And whether they are aware of it or not, most libertarians have an underpinning of bigotry. That means that they oppose affirmative action. They oppose acknowledging or undoing the injustices of the past. They oppose expanding access to the best government-sponsored benefits jobs. They oppose sharing. They struggle with the idea that government can play a positive role in a nation being cohesive and invested in and flourishing with thriving infrastructure and a value system undergirding that investment that helps respond to problems as they arise. So the problems of diminishing biodiversity and the problems, the very human problems of the climate crisis or the climate emergency. We need a government that can respond to problems as they arise, but libertarians seek to deprive government of any power other than the power to obstruct and the power to cut subsidies and tax benefits for the wealthiest among us. They want to pander to the wealthy who are disproportionately white, and they want to have their bigotry unchallenged. They definitely get very offended if you tell libertarians that there is a bigotry underpinning their approach to life and their philosophical understanding of the world. Yes, but we've got comments. Christopher said, I attended Catholic school from K to 12. My grandmother took us to church every Sunday at her Baptist church. Each faith looks at sexuality in similar ways, and we were taught to have open arms to all. Hence, people who state that they cannot deal with a certain group of their individuals because of their sexuality or beliefs, in my opinion, are full of it. Yes, Christopher, I'll agree with you, because I think it's often smokescreen that there's bigotry that underpins sexuality-based bigotry, because they understand they can sublimate their hostility to people of different racial backgrounds or ethnic backgrounds, and they can sublimate that hostility into being hostility against gender diverse people. But ultimately, it's hostility against diversity, and they want the homogeneity of heterosexual people, but typically white Christian heterosexual people. And that's why it's evangelical Christians who have the highest proportion of Trump voters, because those pulpits are most comfortable with the grift involved in telling people, donate lots of money to us and we will reward you by insisting that you vote for Trump and that he is the godly choice, and also that you must condemn this Satan as expressed by people who are gender diverse, and they will describe, or they will ascribe, satanic motivations to people who want to promote diversity of gender and diversity of sexuality. Christopher says the only religion that influences their decision-making paradigm is far-right racist gibberish. Well, yes, but there's a lot of mutually beneficial grifting, bidirectional grifting that occurs in some church pulpits and some Republican circles, that there's an unholy coalition between some religious leaders and Donald Trump's Republican Party, which is to say the hood off, the Nazi emboldening section of the Republican Party, which is also not to excuse the quiet bigotry of those who've kept their hoods on, and by which I mean who've kept their bigotry more hidden, more concealed under the language of civility and claims to be patriotic and inclusive, which they often use a lot of very projection style accusations. So they will try and confect outrage and accuse the Democratic Party of being the true racists, and the people who are intolerant, because they won't tolerate intolerant Christians, because they push back. They have the audacity to push back against people who say they don't want to serve gay customers or Jewish customers. It's typically gay customers at the moment, because that's what they've found they can most productively spin outrage about. They can most productively create a false story. Anyway, I've got to go, chaps. Did I touch on Liz Cheney as I promised I would? I said that she had denounced Trump. No honest person now can deny that Trump is an enemy of the Constitution. She said, Donald Trump believes we should terminate all rules. This is a quote from Trump, from his account on Truth Social, that we should terminate all rules, regulation, and articles, even those found in the Constitution, to overturn the 2020 election 2 years later, close to 3 years later. No, 2 years later, in favor of installing him as an unchallengeable despot who hasn't won an election, but who wants to incite further insurrectionist activity on his behalf. He wants to encourage people to take up his statement and say, yeah, rules should be overturned, regulations and articles of the Constitution should be overturned in favor of putting me back in office, regardless of the outcome of the election. You should do it on the strength of my say-so and me saying what an outrage it is that employees in Twitter took down took away some tweets that linked to photographs of Hunter Biden's genitals and one photo of a woman's genitals that were illegal in terms of being sexual pictures posted without the featured person's consent. So they were breaking that law. It's perfectly fine for a social media platform to enforce the law with regards to taking down revenge porn. And when I say revenge porn, I mean the Republican Party allies promoting violating Hunter Biden's privacy because it's scandalous in itself, because it attracts attention, because being able to see a naked picture of Hunter Biden exposes him for being a drug addict who did things that normal people might have second thoughts about. Normal people might not store dozens of naked photos of themselves on their laptop, although some people might do that and still be perfectly sane and not at all addicted to drugs. But there were also photos of drug usage in there as well. So the intent was to embarrass Hunter Biden by posting pictures of his genitals prior to the 2020 election. And Twitter was trying to avoid a repeat of Russian assistance helping Donald Trump illegitimately win that particular election. So they had read a letter signed by over 100 intelligence analysts who said that Russia could very well be behind the hacking of Hunter Biden and potentially fabricating details and claiming they were found on his laptop. The provenance of his laptop had not been well established at that point. So it was appropriate caution, and it certainly didn't violate the First Amendment, because the First Amendment precludes the government suppressing your speech, and Joe Biden's election campaign team is not the government. Aspirationally, they're the government, but they weren't the government in 2020. So I think Musk's efforts to make a scandal and manufacture a scandal out of that haven't gained traction amongst reasonable or sane people. Certainly in the frothy world of conservatives, modern conservatives, many of whom are supporting Donald Trump as he dines with neo-Nazis, both Kanye West, neo-Nazi Kanye West, and neo-Nazi Nick Fuentes. It's been a hard week for Jews living in America, I would imagine. Hard for me as a granddaughter of a Holocaust survivor to see Kanye West post a picture of a swastika inside the Jewish symbol, the Star of David. Hard for me to listen to Kanye West say that he supports Hitler, that he loves Hitler, has so many things he likes about Hitler. That was really hard to listen to. Kanye West sitting on Alex Jones's InfoWars show and say those words, because Hitler, as we know, is someone responsible for orchestrating the kidnapping of literally millions of Jews from across Europe, kidnapping them and transporting them on cattle trucks and sending them to camps where many people contracted diseases and died. Many people died excruciatingly painful deaths from the gas Cyclone B in rooms where they were told they were going to take a shower. People were divided in lines according to whether or not it looked like they could provide physical labor, and the children and the people who were weaker, who were sent to the gas chambers and whose remains were then burned in ovens. I mean, you take it for granted that in modern civilized society, everybody knows that's a bad thing, but not Kanye West, not Nick Fuentes, not Donald Trump. They are, if you have two Nazis and a friend hosting them at a table, then you have three Nazis. And I don't know if everybody remembers, because I've broadcast about it frequently before, but a Vanity Fair article exposed Trump as having had a book of Hitler's speeches that he kept in his bedside table. His first wife, his now deceased first wife, Ivana Trump, had told a journalist about this. And when Trump was asked whether or not he possessed a book of Hitler's speeches, said, "Who told you that?" And then agreed that he did have a Hitler book, but that he claimed it had been given it to him by a Jewish friend. And on inquiry, that friend turned out to be not Jewish. So it wasn't a book given to him out of historical interest. It was a book somebody gave to him because they sensed that Trump had an affinity for dictators, and they were right. So Kanye West also has an affinity for dictators. Shouldn't be surprising. He's already told people that he thinks he's a god. So fascist leaders are often people who do come across as being very confident and exploit the human tendency to attribute competence to someone who exudes confidence. So fascist leaders are often people who exhibit such a strong level of confidence that they win supporters and are then able to corrode democracies and overturn democracies by building up a critical mass of supporters whose insecurities have been weaponized, whose tribalistic hatreds have been weaponized, whose prejudices, whose bigotries, and whose yearning for excitement and self-importance have been weaponized, whose tendency to have a hole in their heart that can be filled by a group activity of disdaining another group. Hooray, the type of toxic patriotism that says Jews are bad, the kind of toxic patriotism that says let's be proud of ourselves via disdaining Mexican migrants. Let's feel like we're strong and resolute and resolved to defend ourselves by condemning invading migrants and forgetting the contributions of migrants, both documented and undocumented, because America coasts along the efforts of its migrant contributors who have synergistically contributed to America by seeking a better lives for themselves and their families, but giving to the United States their hard work, their flexibility, their willingness to do all manner of tasks, the economic ability to unblock labor bottlenecks that keep an economy constricted. They help America's economy grow and flourish, and they should be valued and cherished, and many do. But fascism in the United States, fascism as expanded by Donald Trump, exploits the stupidity of people, the gullibility of people who buy in to that need to build their own self-esteem on the back of expressing and acting on hostility to other groups and deriding and undermining their contribution. So Paul is here. Hello, Paul. How is your wife going? How is Rose? I haven't seen you for a while, but it's really nice to see you. And I did say I had to go, and I very much should do that. But it was so lovely to see you all. Please watch the replay video if that's something that would interest you. And if you want to Google Trump's connections to a copy of Hitler's speeches, you can Google Trump, Vanity Fair, Hitler, and you'll find that story, which goes as far back, I think, as 1996. I'll just quickly check. Trump, Vanity Fair. It's going to be hard to find now because all of the, okay, good. It's a 1990 Vanity Fair profile by Marie Brenner. There we go. So the original article was in 1990, but there's a modern article about it in October the 17th of this year. But yes, Marie Brenner, 1990, Vanity Fair, Trump, Hitler. And there you'll find her investigation and her efforts to confirm with Trump that he had a book of Hitler's speeches in his bedside table as per the recounting of his ex-wife in their divorce proceedings. She told lawyers that he had Hitler's speeches in a book by his by his bedside table. Christopher says, thank you for another great show. Oh, Christopher also wants to note that Ben Carson, Herschel Walker, Kanye West, and others like them, please understand that African Americans look at them as sellouts. I absolutely agree with you, and it's a strategy of fascists, divide to conquer, to pit two communities that have historically had a lot of common cause and mutual solidarity, Jews and Black Americans, American Jews and Black Americans. Yes, and are often targeted in ways to weaponize some people's insecurities and some people's fears and some people's ambitions, because the ambition of unprincipled people is a powerful way to reinforce the self-congratulating whitewashed racism of the Republican Party. They can say, we're not racist. Look at us. We totally support Herman Cain. I heard that from racist people on Facebook when I was first beginning to interact with Americans in 2016. They were like, I'm not racist. I like Herman Cain. I would have voted for him as a presidential candidate, potentially. Herman Cain was not a friend to other Black Americans. He was a self-serving person who derived income and influence and praise and attention from helping the Republican Party whitewash, launder their true policy outcomes, which are preservation of systemic white privilege, systemic white pandering, systemic gatekeeping of the good jobs, the good benefits for white people, and resisting and opposing and obstructing efforts to broaden the circle of inclusion, to allow to make that push through affirmative action to force corporations to change their culture, for everybody to change their hiring practices, to overcome the unconscious or conscious prejudices that exclude Black people from obtaining access, in many cases, to the best America has to offer. Paul says she's recovering slowly, but like a warrior. Thanks for asking. Yay, go Rose. That's wonderful news. Thank you for sharing that with us. And thank you for your encouragement, Christopher. We're all working on building our pro-democracy vocabulary and building on our ability to push back effectively at disinformation and to stand up for a truly inclusive, flourishing America, an inclusive, flourishing America. That's what I want. I'm writing that down as a goal. That moves past, that is capable of moving past its tendencies to gatekeep. Its tendencies to gatekeep and to hold on to damaging practices. Damaging habits of despising others, of preserving confidence by despising others, preserving confidence and self-regard by despising others, by despising other groups, by despising members of other groups. Particularly people who've been badly treated, as a strategy of unresolved guilt and bad feelings, and they just push it all to the side and say, no, I don't have to deal with any of that guilt or any of that conscience call for reparations if I say, no, there's something inherently wrong, and that's why slavery happened, not because we had a moral failing in and of ourselves in choosing to exploit others. Our ancestors did nothing wrong. There is an inherent badness that led us to subordinate them, that led us to act in this morally bankrupt way. We're not morally bankrupt. There's some inherent lack of merit that just forced our hand. It is cowardly. It is it is ridiculous, but it is also entrenched. Okay, I better go. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care. Best of luck to Rose. Thank you, Christopher. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Craig. Thank you to any replay viewers. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Tend the garden in your heart as if you have to remember to pull out the weeds and water it with good quality information and a healthy skepticism about some claims, but not so skeptical that you fall into the rabbit hole or that you become seduced by the ego puffery of false conspiracies. Don't get seduced. Take care.